Hi everyone. So in this problem, there are 600 children on a field. And the first thing that we're told is that 30% of them are boys, and then we know that 70% of them are not boys. Before we start, let's find out how many of boys and not boys these percentages actually represent. So if we take, let's work with white. If we take 30%, find out how much 30% of 600 is, we'll find out that there were 180 boys to start off with. And if we take 70% of 600, we'll find out that there were 420 kids who were not boys. So then the next thing that happens is a whole bunch of boys join the field, and that changes the percentages. So now we can no longer say that 30% are boys and 70% are not boys. We've added more children, so these percentages are no longer valid because we're working with a new number of children. We added a bunch here, and we have to include that in our percentage, but we don't know how many boys showed up, and it's our job to find out. Now, while we don't know exactly how many boys showed up, we do know that the number of boys that's represented across the entire field is now 40%, not 30%, which means that if I subtract that 40% that represents boys, I now know that the amount of children on the field who are not boys is now 60%. So I know that this part is now actually worth 60%, not 70%. And I happen to know how many kids who are not boys there are, and it was 420. So if 60% of the kids on the field are not boys, and there are 420 of them, I can find out how much 1%, how many kids 1% represents. So I'm going to divide both sides by 60. And I will find out that 1% represents exactly 7 children, regardless of gender. And now I can find out how many children are represented with the entire graph. So I'm going to multiply, actually, to go from 1% to 100, I'm going to divide both sides by 100. And that tells me that 100%, which represents the entire graph, or all the kids on the whole field, means that there are 700 children. And I know that we started off with 600 children. So if I subtract 600 from 700, I get 100 children. That's how many children showed up, and we were told that they were all boys. So that is our answer. 100 boys were added to the field. The 5 teams were made up of boys. It doesn't really matter that there were 5 teams. They just kind of threw that in there to possibly challenge or confuse us, but there were 100 boys in the 5 teams that showed up all together. That is your answer.